Hey guys, Mr. Kavanaugh here. I want to go through some guided notes quickly, the outline of the 7 articles of the Constitution, what I mentioned this morning, the message on Google Classroom. Pay very close attention to these articles. These need to go in your notes as well, and you need to snap a photo of them and submit them to our Dropbox. These will be for points. You need to have these articles in your notebook written down. Pay close attention to them as well, because you will see a question down the road on a quest asking you in the correct order to list the 7 articles of the Constitution. We're not going to delve too deeply into them. We will at a later time, and especially as we get into 3 branches of government. So pay very close attention as I go through these. You need to be writing these down and have them in your notebook. So the first article is Article 1 of the Constitution. Article 1 sets up the legislative branch, or Congress, the people's branch. And their primary duty is to translate public will into public policy, which is a fancy way of saying a bill to law, to legislate. Public will, what the people want. An example would be Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a bill. I'm just a bill sitting here on Capitol Hill. In that episode of Schoolhouse Rock, in the very beginning, the people wanted safety lights and crossing arms at the railroad stops. So they contacted their congressman, public will. They told him what they want, and he said, they're right, there ought to be a law into public policy. Public will to public policy. Bill to law, legislate. So, Article 1. So you can get this into your notes. Article 1 sets up Congress, the legislative branch, and their primary duty is to translate public will into public policy. Side note, why is Congress first? Why is Congress first? Keep this in mind and jot this down as well. Congress, or the legislative branch, is an extension of the people. That's why they're first. The presidency is not first. Actually, if you look at Article 1 closely, which we will, Article 1 is huge. Tons of information. Article 2, which we'll see in a second, that sets up the executive, there's not a lot of information. Really, at the end of the day, the president is nothing more than a glorified clerk, if you want to come down to it. But you do need to pay close attention to the role of the president today. You need to be watching the news, which you should be. I know you are. News outlets, reading a variety of sources, and watching the role that the president plays, but in conjunction with Congress, the people's branch. Remember, first 3 words of the Constitution, we the people. To quote Lincoln from the Gettysburg Address, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We the peeps, yo. Article 2. Article 2 sets up the executive branch, the presidency, the executive branch, the presidency. The primary duty of the executive is to execute the laws of the land. He has other duties, but really what sticks out in Article 2 is to faithfully execute the laws of the land, to carry them out of what the people wants. He does have wiggle room, which we'll talk more about later once we get deeper into Article 2 and the presidency. He has wiggle room on how he can execute which laws. But the primary duty of the presidency is to execute the laws of the land. So Article 2, executive branch, execute the laws of the land. Have that down in your notes. Excellent. Article 3. Article 3 sets up the judiciary, the judicial branch, the courts. Our focus is on, since we're doing constitutional issues, and the 7 articles, our focus is on Article 3, constitutional courts, the federal courts. Not so much the local and state courts, but the federal courts. That is our focus. Article 3 sets up the judiciary, federal courts. A little side note question, Article 3 only set up one court, the United States Supreme Court. But there's language that allowed Congress to establish other courts as needed, which they would. So you have district courts, courts of appeals, and then the United States Supreme Court. So the judicial branch sets up the courts. Their primary duty or duties is to mediate arguments between the states, and the biggie is to say what the Constitution means, to interpret the Constitution. That is their primary focus. Constitutional issues. Reflect back to judicial review. Remember that definition of judicial review we talked about in Marbury versus Madison. So, Article 3. Article 3, the judicial branch mediate arguments between the states and interpret the Constitution. Know your justices as well. Article 4. Article 4 of the Constitution. Article 4. The duty or job of Article 4, if you will, what Article 4 is all about is about relationships. It's about relationships between the states, each other, and the states and the federal government. So, Article 4 deals with relationships between the states and the federal government, which is really playing out right now during this time period we find ourselves in. You see this relationship between the states and the federal government all working in conjunction to combat COVID-19. So that's what's taking place right now in our government, is the relationship between the federal government, states, local governments here in Indianapolis. That's why I am doing this video, is because the governor and the mayor, in conjunction with the federal government, no more meeting of large groups. It is a government order. And that's why I'm doing this video. And I know it's amazing, right? Maybe I should do this all the time. So Article 4, I'm going to read the definition and show it to you. Sets up the relationship between the states as well as the relationship between the states and the federal government. So you need to have this in your notes. Have that in your notes. Some quick tidbits, but I'll delve into it later. Some of the things regarding the relationship between states, as you delve deeper into Article 4, you'll get into what's called the full faith and credit clause of Article 4, which, just to break it down, means citizens of other states will be treated the same as they travel through other states. If I'm a citizen of Indiana, if I travel to Ohio, I will not be treated differently because I'm from Indiana. I will have the same expectations that citizens of Ohio have in most cases. So keep that in mind. Full faith and credit clause of Article 4. So as you delve deeper also into Article 4, you have privileges. Now check that, check. That's privileges and immunities. Privileges and immunities go back. What I was talking about is being treated the same as a citizen of Indiana if I go to Ohio. That's called privileges and immunities clause. Full faith and credit clause deals with documentation, civil law. So for example, full faith and credit clause, if I'm married, my wife and I are married in the state of Indiana. If we move to Illinois, do we have to get remarried? No, we don't, because Illinois will recognize our marriage from Indiana. Another example, driver's licenses. If I'm driving through another state, do I have to stop and get a driver's license when I enter that state? No, I don't, because the state will accept that civil document, which is my driver's license. Ohio had no problem taking my driver's license when they pulled me over when I was going a little fast. That was some years ago, another story. You don't want to hear about that. Wait for the movie. So Article 4, just to recap, sets up the relationships between the states and the federal government. Have that in your notes. Moving right along. Article 5 of the Constitution deals with amending the Constitution. Article 5 deals with the process of amending, which I'll talk about further as we delve into the amendments after this. But Article 5 deals with amending the Constitution or changing the Constitution. Article 5. The framers knew they were going to make mistakes. They left a way out. So they left a way you could change the Constitution. Article 6. Article 6 of the Constitution. There are 3 provisions in Article 6 that I want you to know and have in your notes. The first one is the Supremacy Clause. And just breaking it down, what it says, all laws, treaties, pinky swears that the federal government enters into will be the supreme law of the land. So say, for example, if you have a federal law that conflicts with the state law, in most cases, the federal law will probably win out. That's not always the case, though. It is up to the courts to decide who is in the right. The courts, they're the referees, they're the final arbiter. So, Supremacy Clause. Remember, the Supremacy Clause, Commerce Clause, Necessary and Proper Clause give the federal government, as you say in the hallways, uber power. Also within Article 6, deals with the national debt. So what it talks about is the federal government will assume all the debt that it had before the Constitution was created. Actually, we've been a debtor nation since day one, which is another story. Also, Article 6, no religious test to hold public office. Before the Constitution, many states had their own state-sponsored religions. And to hold public office in that state, you had to be of that faith. And even if you weren't of that faith, your tax dollars still went to support that religion. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison hated that, especially Jefferson, who worked hard to do away with that in the state of Virginia, which is one of the things that appears on his tombstone, his work to establish religious freedom in the state of Virginia. And he and James Madison were tight. They were BFFs. Madison brings it into the federal Constitution. So no religious test to hold public office. So here's Article 6. Article 6, Supremacy Clause. Federal legislation will be the supreme law of the land. National debt. We will address our national debt. Maybe. And no religious test to hold public office. Have those in your notes, please. One final thing. Article 7 of the Constitution deals with ratification. Ratification, to accept the Constitution. Why do they send the Constitution to the people, to these ratifying conventions? Because they wanted their consent in order for the Constitution to be considered a legal document. Remember, when they went to Philadelphia, they were there to fix the Articles. But once they're in Philadelphia, they were like, the Articles are terrible, as they really looked deeper into them. They're terrible, so they did away with the Articles, and let's sit down and write a whole new document. And that's when Madison wheels out the Virginia Plan, and they start breaking it down from there. Virginia Plan, New Jersey Plan, Connecticut Compromise, 3/5 Compromise, ratification. Here we are, ratification. So Article 7 deals with ratification. And you know you need 9 states to ratify, or needed 9 states to ratify, which they got, New Hampshire being the 9th, as you know. So Article 7 deals with ratification. Boom, there you are. 7 articles of the Constitution. Have these in your notes. You will need to know them. Article 1 through 7. There will be a question down the road. Later on today, you get them in there, snap a photo, submit it to our Dropbox. Excellent. Kavanaugh out.